Happy Saturday, everyone. My name is Bob Davis, and I'm the co-owner of Soul Patrol, along with my brother Mike, who's producing tonight's show. And I'm the host of this endeavor called the Soul Patrol Spotlight. So we have a spectacular broadcast planned for you guys. So I want to first thank everybody for signing up and coming out. Um, Today is the 51st anniversary of the passing of Jimi Hendrix. So we thought that it would be instructive for all of us if we focused in on the legacy of Jimi Hendrix, specifically to the black community. It's a controversial topic because, of course, Hendrix is one of the few artists that has both a white constituency and a black constituency. And it seems that over the years, never the twain shall meet. We think that there's something wrong with that. We especially think that there's something wrong that constituency many times leaves out the legacy that he left. Just so that we reset our agenda, because I know some people might have come in a little late, didn't hear the whole agenda. First thing up was to show the video, which we just did. We've reserved this time to do some Q&A, which we will do in just a moment. And then about 10, 15 minutes, and then we'll go into our panel discussion. Now, one thing I wanted to just mention is, I should reintroduce myself. I'm Bob Davis, co-owner of SoulPatrol.com and the host of tonight's show, the Soul Patrol Spotlight. We did not get a whole lot of questions. So I think what I'm going to do is basically just interview Corey. But if you do have some questions, feel free to send them in. Now, we're going to do a little test before we get started. And y'all who know me have an idea of what kind of test we're getting ready to do. What we got was a lot of props for Corey. And well-deserved, I might add. Now, one of the things because I get a lot of props too. And one of the things that people always ask me is, hey, Bob, you get a lot of props, man. You must be making a lot of money off of the site. I said, well, to be honest with you, the site feels more like it's it's being done as a public service as opposed to being a profit-making entity. But I know that in Corey's case, he actually wrote a book. So what I would like to see is for those of you who gave him all those props, how many of you will go buy his book? So we'll just do that as a little test. And I believe the link has been posted in the chat room, so you should all have it by now. And if you don't have it yet, you'll have it in just a moment. Okay, we're starting to get a few questions. Ken asks, how has the National Museum of African American Music in Nashville dealt with Hendrix's black legacy as compared to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
I actually got a chance to visit the museum in Nashville, and I guess it mainly highlighted more so his roots in Nashville, starting off with R&B a little more than they do the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So that's one aspect that they do. A lot of it, though, is I don't want to be too critical, taking digs at them, but there was I really wish they would have done more and gone into many of his influences and not just his Nashville roots, because when people come there, they're coming from all over, so they want to know more than just what he did in Nashville. So, but that is something that I did notice they emphasized a little more.
Can I help you out a little bit with this one, Corey? because I
Go
actually know a
ahead.
lot about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Rock and Roll Hall of Fame has 3 floors. And at the time when I went to go visit there, it just so happened that they were doing a special exhibit for Jimi Hendrix up on the 3rd floor. Now, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame gets a lot of criticism because its induction process is pretty unfair, and I would agree with that. However, if you ever go visit the museum itself, you'll walk away from that museum understanding that the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame Museum is probably one of the best Black history museums in the United States. And what I saw there was they did a very, very comprehensive job of really not only documenting but displaying the history of Jimi Hendrix. So, I haven't been to the one in Nashville yet, so I can't really comment on that. But if you ever go to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland, you'll see that they have a lot about Jimi Hendrix there. And they have a lot there, a lot of the same information there that you allude to in your video and in your books, Corey. So they're not trying to hide anything. So,
Well, when I was there, though, I don't know, you may have gone there before or after me. When I was there, a lot of the stuff I saw was like a couch and, artifacts. And I'm just hoping that we move beyond that at some point and start talking about, things of substance for people. That's all I'm trying to get at. Seeing a guitar is nice, seeing his clothes is nice, but this guy, he was actually so very impactful that that's where I choose to spend most of my time researching his impact.
hmm okay. Well, moving right along, you mentioned Ricky Vincent. Ricky Vincent is in our audience tonight, and he's got a question. He wants to know what about the women that impacted his style and sound? And he's got Fane and Betty Davis as examples.
Right. Fane fortunately passed away recently, but she was often called his muse. She was very influential from the beginning when he was first, went to Harlem. And even being able just having somebody to bounce ideas off of, with his blues records and feedback, getting that feedback from her. And as far as Betty Davis, I think a lot of his interaction with her is still, under wraps, so to speak. She has been kind of hush hush about a lot of it. So, just from what we do know, there's a lot of speculation about, between her and Jimmy and Miles and things like that. But, she was the one that definitely turned Miles on to Hendrix and Sly. So I would guess that, as far as her influence on Jimmy, I think that's something that I'm really waiting to hear her come out and speak more about. I would definitely, I know she had the documentary and I saw that, but it didn't really touch much on her relationship with Jimmy.
Okay. John M. Smith wants to know if there's any recording of the Newark, New Jersey show that you spoke of in the video.
There's no recording of that show. I haven't even seen a fan like bootleg of it. But, if it was, collectors would be all over it because that's the show where he played a tribute to Martin Luther King. And it was supposed to be this, very soulful, heart wrenching dirge, that he played for he just called it, I'm going to play something for a friend. And everybody knew exactly who that friend that he was talking about. So if it ever resurfaces, I'm sure it'll be a huge, people will be talking about it.
For people who don't know, here's a little piece of trivia I thought was kind of interesting. Jimi Hendrix had a nickname for Martin Luther King, he called him Captain Coconut. And if you go and you listen to the album Crash Landing on side two, there's a song on side two that's called Captain Coconut. It's an instrumental joint, and of course Hendrix tears it up. It's called Captain Coconut. So
Yeah, I've heard that one.
you've heard it, yeah. Moving right along. What's your opinion about Jimmy? It's from Brian Doyle. What is your opinion on Jimmy trying to take more control of his music and sharing the traditional fate of such black musicians like Sam Cooke and maybe Michael Jackson?
Yes, toward the end of his life, Jimmy definitely wanted more control over his music. He wanted to play with more musicians. He wanted to branch out. He wanted to expand the band. I think there's talk of him, doing more like a R&B type thing with horns. I mean, he just was all over the place. But when you have management such as Mike Jeffrey, all they're looking at is the bottom line. All they're looking at is how much money we can make. And Jimmy was not that kind of artist. So as he alluded to, Sam Cooke and all these different people, when they wanted to try to get control of their music or their masters, a lot of them met a suspicious, death or so forth. And since we are on the day of Jimmy's death, we can't really shy away from the fact that his death is shrouded in a lot of controversy. He was a very powerful person, and just some people, there were some people that benefited from him being dead rather than alive. So I think that may be what he's alluding to, because Brian is a authority on Jimmy's death, and so I know what he's talking about.
Okay. Well, we're out of time for the Q&A portion. We got some more questions, and if it's appropriate, I'll bring those up during the panel discussion. So what we want to do is we want to jump in. And by the way, Corey, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. What we want to do is we want to get into the panel discussion. So, Mr. Producer, can we get the four shot? There we go. So, I'm going to let everybody really give a 30-second elevator speech on themselves. But we have, for our panel discussion, we have Daryl McNeil, we have Corey, and we have the legendary Mr. Ernie Isley. So why don't we start with you, Daryl, and give us 30 seconds on yourself.
Well, first and foremost, thank everybody for inviting me to be part of this. Very briefly, I'm the director of operations for the Black Rock Coalition, 501c3 dedicated to documenting and promoting alternative, progressive Black music, past, present, and future, correcting history, advancing futures. So that's the thumbnail on the Black Rock Coalition. Myself, I'm a musician, producer, um, music, film, television, I'm also an author, writer, and a music critic. Very gratified to be here. Very gratified to be speaking on one of the more iconic figures in all of Black music, Mr. James Marshall Hendrix. And with that, I pass the baton.
Okay. Corey, you already introduced yourself. So, Mr. Isley, can you introduce yourself to our audience?
Yeah, I'm the guy that was 11 years old when I met Jimi Hendrix for the first time. He came to live in our house for about 2.5 years, from like March of '63 to November of '65. My older brothers got him his very first Fender guitar. Uh, when the Beatles were on Ed Sullivan for the first time, I sat on one side of the couch. My younger brother Marvin sat on the right side, and Jimi Hendrix himself was in the middle. And Ed Sullivan said, "Ladies and gentlemen, the Beatles." But there was no clap of thunder over our house. We did not know that on that couch was, in a short period of time, was a electric guitar deity. A few days went by after that, and my eldest brother, amongst other things, my eldest brother Kelly said, "This English group's got two guitar players." We. And when he said, "Yeah," I looked over at Jimmy. He was grinning ear to ear at that remark. And had he been around when that lady was out, he probably would have given me something between a bear hug and a tackle. I said, "Ernie, how in the heck did you ever learn how to do that?" I said, "Hey, man, you were in the living room. You were in the dining room. You were playing all the time, and you don't know how, divine will of God is." And turned out that eventually I played. That's about it in the short run. That's the microwave version. When somebody lives
The microwave.
Yeah, the microwave. When somebody lives in their house for 2 years, man, and every day that he is in the house, he's playing his guitar. And if you're quiet, you're going to hear him, you're going to see him, and you just kind of know that there's something unique about this person. He was a gentle spirit. He had a healthy appetite. He had a great sense of humor. When I think of him, I'm always 11 years old because that's what I was when I first met him. And that guy, emotionally for me, is just the best electric guitar player.
Okay.
That's my feeling. Having, like I said, I was experienced before the record came out. It was a unique place to be.
Okay. So now that we all know each other intimately, what I want to do next is to roll right into our panel discussion. And I'll act as a moderator, and I'll try to keep my mouth shut, except, maybe I'll interject something every now and then. So to get us started, what I want to do is I would like to re-ask the same question that Corey asked me when I first met him. And he had approached me because, at that time I had a lot of Hendrix information up on the Soul Patrol website, which was surprising to, not only him, but to a lot of other people because they figured that, Hendrix didn't belong on a website that, at least on the surface, is dedicated to soul music. And so Corey had some questions for me. And the first question that he had for me, and what I'd like to do is go around the room and have you guys respond and maybe get into a little bit of dialogue about it, was he wanted to know whether or not there was any radio stations, any black radio stations, that ever played any of Hendrix's music. And so, of course, I gave him a complex answer. I said, well, I grew up in New York, and in New York, Frankie Crocker, he did the unusual, and he actually played he was a friend of Jimi Hendrix's, and he actually played Jimi Hendrix's music on black radio in New York City when I was a kid, when I was 11 years old, because I used to listen to Frankie Crocker every day. But that was not typical of black radio stations. They didn't all have a guy like Frankie Crocker that would play anything. I mean, Frankie Crocker would play, he would play Miles Davis. He would play Jimi Hendrix on basically what was supposed to be a straight up, R&B station. So none of the other R&B stations or R&B jocks, even in New York, played any Jimi Hendrix. That was kind of considered to be blasphemy for Frankie Crocker to be doing that. So that really probably was not exactly the answer that Corey was looking for, but maybe you guys could respond to it. Daryl, what do you think about that question?
Well, like you said, Bob, it's really complex because, and we discussed this like off air privately. Um, Jimi Hendrix kind of came up at a really awkward and challenging time for radio in general, specifically with regard to Black folks and race, and specifically with regard to what rock and roll was and what rock and roll was not. Corey alluded a little bit to it in the video that he did, but I'll try to simplify it as much as possible. First and foremost, we have to start with the basic premise that Black people do not get to name their own music. Historically, we have not had the opportunity to name and classify our own music. We have not been able to set the criterion as to what constitutes what genre, what constitutes what disqualifies you from a particular genre. So, from my standpoint as an individual, for the most part, I tend to throw a lot of the genre separation like out the window because for the most part, most of black, most of American music, most of America, most of American popular music has black roots, and you can pretty much trace the DNA of pretty much every American genre of music to black folks in some shape, form, or fashion. Having said that, knowing the history, when we start getting into the business of commercializing and making money from music, the people who are in control of the machines and the apparatus essentially declare what music and what is what. They determine the criteria. They determine what music goes where, what belongs where, who gets to perform it, who doesn't. Bringing this all, and that's just a very broad and general way of saying that Jimmy, and I'm sure that Mr. Isley can attest to this, Jimmy came up at a time when things were shifting in terms of what rock and roll was and what rock and roll was not. Um, Rock and roll itself, the terminology for rock and roll was basically a rebranding of rhythm and blues music. If we're being honest, and if we follow and study the history, um, when you start getting people like Alan Freed and all the other DJs who were like credited to be the pioneers of making rock and roll on radio, what we start seeing is we have white disc jockeys playing rhythm and blues music for white audiences, specifically white teenagers. And then start seeing the, the ushering in of white performers of what is now being called rock and roll, which is essentially rhythm and blues. Again, rock and roll was just a term devised for rhythm and blues so they could sell rhythm and blues to white audiences. And as a result, what we start seeing like post Elvis, like 1956, we start seeing this sort of shift in terms of the population of performers of rock and roll, who these people are, and who they aren't, and what the qualifications are. And as we start moving towards like around specifically around the time of the British invasion and like the California sound with the Beach Boys, etc. Um, the folk music movement, like around like the early to mid '60s, we start seeing marketing branding black performers as not rock and roll artists, and we start seeing the whole rock and roll world being repopulated and targeting specifically white audience. Jimmy unfortunately came up at a time when the landscape completely shifted out from under him, which is one of the reasons why he kind of had to go to London in order to be successful as a black, quote unquote, rock and roll performer. And again, I allude specifically to Mr. Isley because the Isley brothers themselves had to go through that same transition. They started out doing what was termed as rhythm and blues. Then their music starts getting classified as rock and roll, um, particularly when they start getting like national hits like Shout, Twist and Shout, 1957, 1958. And then around the early mid 60s, it's like the Isley Brothers were starting to get classified back in the R&B thing again when they started doing their work with Motown and of course the smash hit "It's Your Thing." So all of that is just to say that Jimmy was caught between two worlds as far as radio was concerned, and the politics behind the scenes kind of put him out as an outlier. He was basically the black unicorn, so to speak, and he was embraced by white radio largely because he was embraced and sanctioned, quote unquote, by European white artists who basically vouched for him here in the States. And as to the depth with which he was genuinely embraced for his full musicianship, that's always like subject to debate. I mean, but I want to keep my comments brief. I've already overextended my time
You know,
talking. This is a doctoral thesis. I'm doing my own like particular work on this, but all that
Miss,
is to
Miss,
say that
Miss,
radio
Mr.
was not. Go ahead, Bob.
No, I just wanted to interrupt and ask Mr. Isley if he had a response to that question.
Uh, Jimmy was played on black radio. See, the Isley Brothers did a song called "Testify," which was
Yay,
created
testify.
for him to take a guitar solo. And there's an E chord that he was playing on that record, the same E chord he used on Purple Haze. But he did take a guitar solo on that record. That was his very first recording session with Testify. He was also on a song called Move Over and Let Me Dance. And there were some kids in my school that had heard about this song. And I bought it in the shop class and I played it. And one of the guys said, "This song's all right, but the guitar is out of here." See, that was him. That was them playing, you know. Um,
Well,
Corey,
you'll be pleased to
well,
hear.
I want to say this about Corey. Corey, you're doing something important and something essential. You know what you're doing? You're documenting history, and history, as it is documented, does not change. And the subject matter that you're talking about is essential to an understanding and embracing of music. I think of certainly. Jimmy has received a lot of divine grace by way of his skill, by way of his talent. And that was why when my brothers first met him, he was hired and permitted to live in our home on the first day and got him his first guitar because he had a gentle spirit and because he had this phenomenal gift. And, you know, I saw him playing left handed, take a white guitar and do like that in the dining room. You know, and I'm 11 years old and I'm like, I had never seen or heard anybody, as much music as I'd been around, do that the way he did it. And, you know, he might come into the kitchen doing a guitar soundtrack while he's gonna drink orange juice. Tell Marvin to pour some orange juice, and Marvin's pouring him the juice. And I mean, it's a whole nother story with that I can go, and stories about him I could go into of a personal nature. Uh, but no, this is a unique person, a unique, gifted musician. And you know, I say, well, who else is like that? Oh, I can say Louis Armstrong in his with his horn. I can say, you know, like there are musicians that you know, like they're on the cusp of something. You know, even they don't know it. You know, for themselves. But it's like my brothers were looking at him like, who is this? This guy is like, man, you can stay in the house. You know, we're not going to charge you for your food that you eat. We're not going to charge you for your room. He was the only guy in the band that received that kind of treatment. And so, you know, I'm speaking about him, and I can speak about him as a person, you know, and the person is one thing, and the talent and the skill and the gift, the divine gift, was attached to that. But he was wow, marvelous dude. You know, just like I say, emotionally for me, he's the best. He's just come. I mean, I wasn't even a musician at all at 11 years old. Neither was Marvin. But emotionally for me, when I think about him, I'm 11 years old and I'm seeing somebody like, man, can't nobody play like this dude. Get out of here. You know, and you can see that in your house before the Beatles come. Before the Beatles come into America, you're allowed to see that. And so that's why Kelly said, you know, now after the Ed Sullivan thing with the Beatles, he said, they got two guitar players, but we got Jimmy. That's right. Can't nobody hang with that dude. No. Man, get out of here. You think somebody can play? Oh, Clapton is God. It's like, you know, that's show business BS. You can't hang with this dude. You know, you just can't. You know, so that's really like all I would have to say about it. But, you know, Corey's doing and done, man, essential. Essential. You're talking about you talking like you be
Let me
talking about
follow up
baseball.
on that.
You doing you're talking about baseball, talk about Willie Mays. You know, come on. You know, talk about Sandy Koufax. These certain people in the game, like in the game, that dude, Jimmy was, hey man, I'll always be 11 years old. Not playing, but you know, opening a social studies book and listening and watching him. And you see him playing behind his back and, you know, with his teeth and all of that stuff before my brother see it. See? So he's springing on everybody on stage, and they'd be like, "Did you just see what he? How did he do that, man?" You know. But me and Marvin, we'd be wild. Marvin would you know interrupt him, you know, while he's practicing. Hey, Jimmy, how do you know when to change, you know, from one string to the other to get a note? And he's take the time and start explaining to a 10-year-old kid what he's doing, you know. And you know, I heard in 1963, 64, I heard the riff of Manic Depression. I heard it. That's the way he played. When I first heard the All You Experienced album, you know, I know there was Purple Haze that everybody was talking about. But when I heard Manic Depression, I said, that's him. That song proves that's it, because that is the way I heard him play. Then, you know, before the Beatles were on it, he was playing. It's an incredible play. And hey man, anything I have to say about him rests on the foundation of praise. Corey, keep doing what you're doing, man. He, you only as you're doing it, you're gonna add to it because there'll be more stuff that is subject to be uncovered. And you Jimmy was like, man, please, ain't nothing. Oh yeah,
This
I would just be laugh. I'd be in the room laughing with him or something, watching Saturday morning cartoons. He mentioned on the Dick Cavett thing. He mentioned Super Chicken. When I heard him do that, I said he remembered. He actually remembered the cartoon Super Chicken that me and Marvin would be watching every Saturday or something. So I mean, the person. You have a chance to see the person and his talented person. But with the person, you get the whole life, the entire life. And see, like, with all due respect, his life is more valuable than his music. See, because you got to have the life first, and that's the marvelous thing. And people start to get into that part. Hey, man, you have that much more appreciation for his music and for his contribution. So, Corey, keep writing, man. keep
I appreciate
that's
that.
essential. Yeah, keep doing it. Keep doing it because you illuminate people. That illumination that comes from the inside. See, that light is on the inside and it comes out. If it's on the outside, you can't see it. It's too bright. Your natural eyes. So that's why Jimmy would be blinding people because they're looking at that thing. It's like, man, you want to get him, you have to go inside. And when you go inside as a musician, then that's where you can have me. You can have Marvin Isley. You can have Prince because those people have the ability to get illuminated. And when that light comes out of them, it comes out as them.
see
You
if
can,
I have
you can see Jimmy, but you can see Prince. You can see Jimmy, but you can see Eddie. You can see because that illumination comes through them, and they come out. The thing there, So everybody that tries to play, if you're looking at Jimmy, try to get to the illumination. That'll be on the inside, and that way, your thing, your expression will come forth. It'll be like, wow, we heard Jimmy, but Prince did, yeah, because Prince got illuminated. It comes from the inside, man. You looking at it from the outside, you'll be blind. It's too bright. You can't hang. You can't see their lights be so bright, man. You can't. Don't even bother to walk. You can't see. You know, and that's why I think for the people that saw him while he was alive, it's like y'all are looking at him. He's gonna blind you.
mm,
He's gonna he's
mm.
gonna blind Eric Clapton. He's gonna blind everybody that calls himself being a guitar player that was around. He's gonna blind. He's gonna blind the Beatles. He's gonna because y'all got a guitar, right? Can you play it like that? No. Can you? Because what he's doing is like that's a divine gift from God. I'd say, man, it says the dust returns to earth as it was, and the spirit returns unto God who gave it. See, that's the territory you're in. The spirit returns unto God who gave it. That's what it is. God bless you. I gotta
Let me
stop.
let me
I
let me
got
let
get
me follow
emotional. I
up.
gotta stop.
Let me follow up. When I first started the site, I used to talk to a lot of what they would call today classic soul artists, and
Mm-hmm.
at the time, I was pretty obsessed with Jimi Hendrix, and so what I would do as part of my interview process with all of those people, I would ask them, and these are people that were primarily based in the '60s. You know, did you ever perform? You ever play with Jimi Hendrix? Do you know every single one of those people said that they had, either in the studio or on the road, that they knew Jimi Hendrix. Everybody played with him. Everybody thought he was crazy, but nobody was surprised when he made it big over in England. Which leads me into I'll ask this question of you, Ernie. I remember when um, Who's That Lady first came out,
Yes.
and
It startled it. It startled the guitar world.
well,
When we first played That Lady at CBS the very first time, cold, they said, well, it doesn't sound like it's your thing. I mean, there's no trumpets or saxophones on it, but we like it.
Mhm.
Now, how are we gonna? What should we do promotion wise? Because it's got elements of R&B, it's got elements of dance, but it's also got this electric guitar sound. How'd y'all do that? He said, "That's my brother Ernie." Huh? Your brother? Yeah, I got another brother, Ernie. He's playing the guitar. You kidding me? No. And we got a brother Marvin on bass, and we got brother-in-law Chris Jasper on keyboards. And so they didn't know when it was going to come out how it would be received. It came out, and kaboom! It went everywhere. AM, FM, soul, so-called rock. I mean, then there were rumors that that was Jimmy playing, and I was like,
well,
"Oh,
that's what I was
I
going to
must be
ask you
pretty
about.
good."
That that's what I was going to
Is
ask you
that?
about because
Yeah.
there was a rumor of saying, "Oh, that's not Ernie Isley, that's Jimi Hendrix. He made a
Hmm.
tape of that, and they just spliced that in before after he died."
No,
And
no. There was two. There was two takes on that lady. The first take was I was between the Earth and Mount Olympus. It was like a guitar instrument played everywhere, and it was a discovery. The song went from like black and white to 3D Technicolor because of the lead guitar, and then it was like, well, you're gonna have to cut back, you know, on the guitar for the vocals. I'm like, the vocals? Are you crazy? You can put it out like that, put Ozzy Brothers on it, it would hit. Nobody disagreed. Ernie, you're gonna have to do take two. So I played take two, and when they said ba da 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 da, I was like, okay, not erase because I don't like it. They said, hold it. I was ticked off when I played take two. Take two was the take that's on the record. Take one was better, but you have to, Lord willing, you have a chance to hear that in the afterlife. But
well,
and I know that if Jimmy had been around, he would have been in the corner of the house laughing his head off. So I know what I already know. I understand Ernie. Get him out of here. I already know Ernie. Ernie never asked me anything. He never touched my guitar. Marvin did. Marvin asked me everything in the kitchen sink, but Ernie never asked, and then it turned out that Ernie's wow, just Ernie had you. Man, I was listening to you. So that's the way it turned out to things work.
well, in my
Corey, keep rocking.
neighborhood, in my neighborhood, I guess what
Uh,
happened was Soul Train. The Isley Brothers were on Soul Train,
mm,
and we used to bowl right after. We used to go bowling right after Soul Train would go off. At I think like at 11 o'clock in the morning, we'd go over to the bowling alley, and we went over to the bowling alley, and the Isley Brothers had been on Soul Train, and everybody was like, "I guess it's not Hendrix on the record. I guess it really is Ernie Isley on the record because they could actually see you playing the song." So and I guess the other thing is, if I had been a little bit more astute when Corey asked me that question, I would have said, well, you know what? If you listen to basically any of the Isley Brothers songs after 1970, you hear a little bit of Jimi Hendrix in every single one of those songs. And that's what Ernie was bringing to the table. I mean, he was making sure that the legacy of Jimi Hendrix went beyond the grave. So, but unfortunately, I wasn't astute enough to give him that kind of answer at that
A
time.
show in 19, yeah, we had a show in 1969 at Yankee Stadium, and in like June, and Kelly picked up the phone and called Jimmy and said, "Jimmy, we're doing this festival show at Yankee Stadium. We want you to do it with us." And he was like, "Hey, man, love to do it, but let me talk to my people and I get back to you." Okay. 2 or 3 days went by and Jimmy called back and said, "Kelly, man, I would love to do it, but I have a commitment to something called the Woodstock Arts and Music Festival on a farm in upstate New York. The promoters don't want me to do the New York City show because they feel like, if I do it, it might hurt ticket sales." Well, see, so much of the crystal ball he had too, because he didn't see it. You don't see the future like that. You don't see it coming. But uh, had he done it, wow. But and I know that was just the movie that's on Hulu now that has Sly and Gladys Knight and all. They had done that in '69 too, you know, and it's a fabulous movie, But Sly was there on that show in Harlem, and Sly was also obviously at Woodstock, So it depends on like how things go. It reminds me of The Godfather, where the guy said, "It will be permitted, but controlled." See, and so
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of things that's permitted. Corey, you obviously you've seen this. There's a lot of things that permitted, but it's controlled. You to a great extent. So um,
Yeah.
that's just
Hey,
the nature of the beast.
hey, Corey, you want to interject anything into this conversation? You're sitting over there all quiet. You don't
Yeah, I'm
get off the
taking
hook.
everything in. I'm kind of. I don't want to get the big head. Mr. Ernie Isley has been giving me a lot of compliments, so I gotta take some time after this and deflate a little bit and take a pen and pop my head a little bit. I don't want to get too big headed. But in all seriousness, to go back to your question about the radio, it's like I've I've asked a lot of people that obviously I was born in '76 that were in that time. For instance, George Darden, he said that he actually got fired from his radio being a DJ for playing Jimi Hendrix. So Rufus Thompson, he was telling me that he would actually try to call these stations around the DMV area, DC, and request to play Hendrix, and he was actually known for that. So there were some people that were pushing and trying to get him on there, but a lot of politics came into play, as Darryl alluded to, especially during the Black Power movement. A lot of segregation within music. But as far as Ernie Isley is concerned, you've already talked about that song, "Who's That Lady?" And I've been doing a lot of thinking about that. 1973 onward. Not just that song, but it was like a string of songs where electric guitar was featured, and I think it was what, Voyage to Atlantis. I know there's a couple of others you can mention, but there's a section in my book where I talk about the conduits of Jimi Hendrix to black radio. Jimmy wasn't played much on black radio, but these artists were. And guess who's number one? Mr. Ernie Isley. I,
But
I mean, I had Prince. Oh, go ahead.
something. Had it been in his destiny to live, okay, a longer life, eventually that door would have come down. It wouldn't have been nothing after we did that lady for Kelly to pick up the phone and say, "Hey, Jimmy, why don't you show up at a show?" And you and Ernie play that lady on stage and you say, "Ladies and gentlemen, before we do this next song, we're going to have somebody who was a house guest and an employee with us." And he comes out and we start playing. I probably just look over at him grinning. Because he'd be like, "Man, what? Come on. Come on." It's like
Yeah.
he's the deity, man. He's the electric guitar deity. I'd be, like, "Man, go ahead, man. Just go. You take it. I'll listen. I'll listen to you. You know."
What about if you were guys both on Soul Train? How about that? That would have been something.
Oh, for that.
Yeah.
See, in the way of you talking about breaking over into the black audience, well, Jimmy played with Isaac, and Isaac played with Jimmy. So that wouldn't be nothing for one way or another, if that was in, divine will, one way or another, for him to get through that door, and people be like, Isley embraced Jimmy, and Jimmy embraced Isley. It's like Isley embracing Notorious B.I.G. or Ice Cube, you know. And it's like the MTV and all of them, they embrace us back using our sampling our catalog. So but you have to be given the time, you know. And it was a brief time. It's brief, 67 to like 1970. This hardly, 3 years, you know. But it would have been. I believe that he would have eventually uh, been embraced, as he is being embraced, man. It's not like he's not, you know. It's not like he's not. It's like folks have to be illuminated. Stop looking at that light though, because you can't see him. He's blinding you. If you go the other way, if you go into illumination and get it from the inside, it's like, you mean this guy got that kind of a gift and he's playing. The Ozzy Brothers brought him his first Fender guitar, and he came into our house. Mrs. Isley, this is Ma. This is a new guitar player we just hired, Jimi Hendrix, and Jimmy. This is my mother. Hello, Mrs. Isley. And my two little brothers, Marvin and Ernie. Hi. And we're not going to charge you for your room. We're not going to charge you for your food. And he was the only guy giving that. You know, that's just somebody catching the vision of what it is about this person and make an exception for him. Not for nobody else in the band, but for him. And obviously, um, glad we did it. the way the way things sort of circled about and turned out, because he would have played Yankee Stadium, you know. And they released the album called In the Beginning, the Isley Brothers and Jimi Hendrix. And he said, "Hey man, if y'all want me to come back in and play some stuff, if you didn't do something right, you want to audition," they were like, no, you did great. Just we gonna put that out, and that came out. Turns out probably like a few months after he passed away, or maybe in early 1971. The Isley Brothers and the Jimi Hendrix in the beginning, and it had Move Over, Let Me Dance, and it had Testify on there, and there's people that talking about playing the music. Isley's play, you know, and there are stations that don't play Isley, and then there's stations that don't play Hendrix, and those two groups have a connection. Those two artists have a connection. And so we didn't have a problem with it, and certainly he didn't have a problem with it. But that's right, Corey. You got to keep writing, man. You got to illuminate these people. It's
Definitely.
illumination, not the spotlight. You should, if they look at that light that you're shining, you'll blind them. They got you got to put it like you're doing it, and let somebody be illuminated. And then when they find out, it's like, oh man, that's really unique. That's really important. That's really essential. Wow, I didn't know all of that about this guy. And he was just here for a brief time, 27 years. It's like you said you were born in 76.
Yeah.
Time went back quick. So keep writing, Corey. Keep writing.
Appreciate that. Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, Gerald, from a Black Rock Coalition perspective, how do we take this legacy and roll it over for the next generation?
Well, I don't want to take anything away from the current generation because a lot of the current generation is picking up on a lot of different things um, about a lot of foundational generational artists. They may not get it 100%, but they're probably not going to, only insofar as the context of the times. Um, and let's just be honest. Jimi Hendrix is a singular talent. Jimi Hendrix is only going to come once in an entire Earth's lifetime. So all we can do is kind of like take as many of the lessons as we can and pass as much of that knowledge and information down as we can. But again, I wouldn't write the current generation off, even if it's just like performative or superficial. It shows that they're paying attention. Um, and unfortunately, we are fighting through a lot of clutter and noise and ephemera with regard to popular music, where musicianship is by and large across the board not really taken all that seriously. Um, you can hear a little bit of Hendrix in her H period, E period, R period, as to like how she stacks up against a Hendrix. That's an unfair comparison. She's doing her own thing, but she's carrying on a legacy. Um, Gary Clark Jr., who to me is like the guy right now. Um, Gary Clark Jr. is like again continuing a legacy. He's doing it in his own way. Lenny Kravitz, he's carrying on a legacy, but he's doing it his own way. I think we do artists a disservice, like looking for the next Jimi Hendrix. I remember there's there's a clip of Ronnie Drayton. For those of y'all who may not be aware, Ronnie Drayton is like signature guitar player in his own right, very much a Hendrix acolyte, and a foundational member of the Black Rock Coalition. And he does a cover with the legendary band Defunct. He does Hendrix. They do their own take on Hendrix's "If Six Were Nine." And the thing about that performance, Ronnie pretty much breaks down Jimmy's whole thing about guitar players. He said, Jimmy was very much about doing his own thing. And he was also very much about other people doing their own thing, people finding their own creative musical freedom. So, again, in terms of like the next generation, the current generation is doing their own thing. And as long as they maintain the musical integrity and they're doing their own thing and they're speaking from an honest voice and the music, to use Mr. Isley's term, illuminates, um, the current generation will be fine. And on a certain level, we kind of have to adjust our receptivity to that. Um, Stay open and free with our reception of that, the way that folks were open and receptive to Jimmy when he basically took over the world for the brief time that we had him. And it's important to stay open and receptive because you never know when again that once in a planetary lifetime talent is going to come along. If you stay looking for some remnant of what came before.
We've got. I just want to let everybody know we've got about 10 minutes left. So I don't want to preclude, any questions that any of you guys may have for each other. Um, but we do have some more questions from the audience. One of the things that I've run across in my time on the internet is that there's a whole collection of people out there who are, I'll just call them, for lack of a better term, Hendrix scholars. I mean, if you talk to, if you if you talk to,
Okay. I gotta laugh at that one.
No, no,
Yeah.
that's see, they got light in their eyes. They can't see. That's
if,
not illumination. That that
if you talk,
that's not illumination. To be a Hendrix scholar, you'd be reading a bunch of publicity, man. This is show business after all. It's still show business, you know. And you say, well, let's talk about Jimmy. Hey, man, let's talk about Michael Jackson. Come on, let's talk about Prince. Let's talk about Janet Jackson. You reading a Hendrix scholar. A certain amount of that stuff is based on show business publicity. You get more. Go to Corey. Corey is gonna give it to you in a way that the Hendrix scholars then that they even say that it's like, man, no, that you're missing it. You're missing it.
well, what I was getting ready to say is that, you know, there are these folks out there. They know all kinds of obscure, I mean, really obscure information that
Mm-hmm.
we have no way of validating that information. But
Mm-hmm.
they will say that Jimi Hendrix has done X, Y, and Z, and I say, oh, that's interesting. Where's the evidence of that? And they're like, well, we just know it. What I'm really getting at here is that I think that sometimes people forget that Jimi Hendrix, you know, we may want to think of him as a deity, or we may want to put this particular type of label on him, or say that he had insight into that. We forget Jimi Hendrix at the time when he died. He was probably the most popular artist in the world. Maybe the Beatles. I'm not sure if the Beatles were still together when he died or not, because I know that they broke up sometime around that
1979.
same time.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the only artist that I would think would be more popular than Jimmy. He was a popular artist. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
people loved him all over the world, and he was one of the few black men that all you had to do was put up. You didn't even have to put up his picture. You could just put up a silhouette of his
Mm-hmm.
head, and people knew who he was all around the world. They could identify who that silhouette was. And about the only other
Mm-hmm.
black man that I know of that you could do that with would be Muhammad Ali.
Muhammad
I mean,
Ali.
so that's he was a pop artist, and he was very uh, popular around the world. And so when we try to put sometimes, the Hendrix scholars, and I'll pick on them, when they try to put almost a religious significance to
Mm-hmm.
Hendrix, I'm like, this guy is somebody that we listen to on the radio.
You
He
know,
bought his records. He wasn't.
you know.
So
I want to say when I was in study hall one day, these guys came in raving about this new song that was on a Hendrix album, and they started playing it, and it was "Have you ever been to Electric Ladyland?" I said Curtis Mayfield, and they said who? I said Curtis Mayfield and the Impressions, man. They said who's that? I said y'all. So much for the Hendrix scholar. It's not Jimmy. It's Curtis Mayfield. That's the illumination part. I went to the illumination. I didn't go to the light in my eye, to the light that shine in their eyes. Don't look at that. That's why when have you ever been? Have you ever been Electric Lady? I said that's Curtis Mayfield, man. Y'all know anything about music? You know who Curtis Mayfield is? You don't hear some of Curtis Mayfield's licks on Little Wing? You don't hear that? Oh, you want to lay all the stuff at the feet of Jimmy. You can do that if you want, but on closer examination, as Corey points out, like you'll find Wes Montgomery in there. You know, you'll find other blues guys in there. Muddy Waters, uh, Jimmy Reed. You'll find that as a reference point, as a touchstone. You know, and you have to sort of like keep that in mind because all of us here, don't we in general listen to everything as much as we can hear? You know, so therefore you can say uh, what you're saying about an artist, but you can also say, oh yeah, so and so's in there. So and so's at the table with him, or he's at the table with so and so. It's not just him exclusively by himself, and he took that in as a listener. Okay, and so it comes out. If he takes in Curtis Mayfield and the impressions, it comes out as Jimmy. Okay, it's like I can hear, yeah, that's Jimmy. The guitar solo in Electric Ladyland, Curtis Mayfield would probably not play that, but he wouldn't voice it that way. But yeah, it comes out as Jimmy, man. That's it. That's him. That's why I say for me, emotionally, he's the best. Just emotion. And music is it got to do with emotion and feelings. Like, man, he's the best. Come on, you need to stop debating that. Go to something else.
We have 3 minutes left. So first of all, I just want to acknowledge that there's a lot of people in the audience tonight that are folks that's a few of us know. I mentioned that Ricky Vincent was in the audience. Rufus Thompson's in the audience. Cordell Dickerson is in the audience. Who else? Who else? Jemiah Dawson. Oh, he's got a question that I think might be relevant here. Jemiah Dawson says, do you think Jimmy was trying to let black people know that music doesn't have one color? The sound of the guitar is international and crosses all color lines. Would you guys say that that's a true statement, or does that deserve further illumination? Any comments?
Hey,
Are we all muted?
on skill, it's like he's just willing to play, man.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean, Jimmy was just doing his thing. He had this instrument, he had this gift. Um, in terms of the things that he was quote unquote trying to do, um, I don't want to put words in his mouth. I don't want to speak on his behalf. He's not here. Um, all we can do is take away as much as we can with the gift that he has given us and do the most that we can with that, be it as a listener, be it as a musician, be it as a quote unquote Hendrix scholar, whatever the hell that means. Um, it, you, you know,
Ernie likes that.
but again, I'm just saying, Jimmy is no longer with us, and we can't. I I absolutely refuse to speak to Jimi Hendrix's mission statement. Um,
Mm.
the work that he has given us is more than enough. The work that he has given us is going to extend generations beyond when we're gone. When all of us in this chat are gone, all of us are who are in the chat room are gone. the work will continue to reverberate generations from now. Again, Jimi Hendrix being this once in an Earth's lifetime type talent. Um, we take the most that we can from them, and we do what we can to make ourselves better and keep it moving.
Well, that sounds like a good place to stop our conversation. So we've actually run out of time. Everybody should know that we recorded this session, and so this will be up on YouTube. So you'll get a second bite at the apple. I want to thank everybody who had participated, both on the panel and in the audience. You should all know that we've done a number of these on Soul Patrol this year with to discuss various aspects of black music. This has been the most successful one that we've done in terms of numbers of people in the audience, and also I would dare say in terms of the quality of the presentation and the discussion. I do not want to leave us, though, without reminding you guys to go buy Corey's book. Go buy the book. You got the link. You know, I know a lot of you guys, you can hit me up via email. You can hit me up via IM. We're already planning on doing another episode of this around the time of Jimmy's birthday, which is in late November. So look out for
Sagittarius.
us. Yep. So
Sagittarius.
thanks to everybody for participating. Thanks Greer for coming on board at the last minute to help out. And that's all I got for you.